Hey guys, how you going? It's Mark Hummer again today. Hope you're doing well. I've got a little treat for you today. I've got something very unusual and a new concept for you. See, I'm always talking about my Z cameras at the moment and the finest S-line lenses like this 24-70 for example. And these lenses are incredible. The cameras are great. I love pretty much everything about them and I've got nothing to complain about. But there are some factors that either haven't been out on the market yet, not available, coming out maybe later in the year, or something that I felt that I can work with that makes things a bit cheaper and more affordable. And that's not only for my benefit, but it's for everybody's benefit to know these options are out there. So this is what I'm showing you today. I'm showing you an option because I was thinking about a wide angle lens. Now I've previously owned the 14 to 30 f4 zoom. And that was a nice broad lens, 14 mils, very wide, ultra wide sort of angle to it, and it would perform brilliantly. But be honest with you, for the $1,500 plus it cost me to buy, it just wasn't worth it value for money wise. In my opinion, it was nothing like this sort of piece of equipment. It was really a bit cheap and nasty. Had that scoping out sort of focus thing going on with the zoom, and it just felt very light and plasticky. Now its performance was great. I'm not saying it's a bad lens, don't misunderstand, but what I'm saying is for the money it cost, I didn't see the value. And at f4 only, well, it just left your options a bit of a wash. I like to be able to go really shallow in aperture. Minimum of 2.8 is my expectation. 1.8 or 1.2, if I can get it, I'll buy them. But 2.8 is a good standard for pretty much everybody's use, and if you get something that's a f2.8, well, you're going to get it. Now, obviously this is a 2.8, and my big zoom, the 70 to 200 is a 2.8, so that standard is very useful and versatile. Right now I'm filming on the 50, 1.2. Now I'm not shooting at 1.2 right now, I'm shooting at f2.8, and that's what we're talking about. It's a very suitable and useful focal range, and particularly I wanted to shoot at 2.8 this time around because I should be showing you lots of little knickknacks and products, and I didn't want a wafer thin shallow depth of field where 90% out of the time what I'm talking about you can't even see or make it out. So I have a little bit more depth of field to play with now, and I think that's going to be very useful for us. So the actual product I'm going to highlight today is not the 14 to 30 because I've owned it and sold it and didn't really appreciate it. Then there is also the option of the 14 to 24 2.8, the new S lens. Now that's a beautiful lens, it looks fabulous. I love the fact that everything focuses internally, just like the 70-200, so you're not changing the balance of the lens when you're zooming in and out. But the problem I'm having with that one is it is a very minimal focal range. So is it expensive? Hell yeah. $3,500. It's crazy expensive for something that I wouldn't be using all the time. Probably would only use it, once or twice a month as a unusual expectation for me. So it's nice to have in the kit, but no, not if I'm using it that infrequently. See, 90% of the time, if I need some sort of a video lens, I'm going to fall back onto this one, the 24-70. It's got a long focal range, I think that's pretty good. It's 2.8, and 24 is generally more than wide enough for what I need when I'm doing video. I mean, let's face it, right now I'm shooting at 50 millimeters. So anything from 35 to 50 is very usable and practical for me. I don't need to go that wide very often, and when I do want to go a little bit wider, this 24mm is perfect and excellent in condition. I mean, it's an S lens prime, very high quality, so I find that I default back to that 90% of the time. In fact, most of my YouTube videos have been shot with this one because of that versatility of range and quality. I love the fact that it focuses very silently and very accurately. But when I want something wide, what are my choices? Do I really want to spend, or would I want you to spend $3,500 on a 14 to 24 2.8S just because it's the latest thing they got? Well, no, I don't think there really is any value in it. There's not value in it for me anyway, and I'd be surprised if there was value in it for you either. So what I'm going to show you today is an option that I've wanted to try out first before I recommended it to make sure it did actually work. And yes, we'll get to a demonstration video a little later where I go outside of my veranda at home and I do a bit of a walk around up and down and in and out, and you'll see that the lens does focus very, very well indeed for what it is. So I'm going to show you the lens right now, and this is it on my Z7 II. And you see here it fits perfectly. I'm using the FTZ adapter with it. And what happened here is you've got the FTZ adapter and you've got this lens here, which is a 17 to 35 millimeter D lens. Yes, believe it or not, the old screw drive D lens. You might be thinking, oh, that's no use, it's only going to be manual focus because it's got that screwdriver arrangement. Well, fortunately, this lens particularly, and I don't think there are too many in the class, I think the 80 to 200 millimeter D lens as well did have the silent wave motor in it as well, and very well could be used on this system with autofocus. But I don't have that one with me to show today. I have this one, and I have of course the 70 to 200S lens, so I certainly won't be buying that. But here we have this lens here, which is traditionally you would be thinking only suitable for a DSLR or for manual focus, and that's not the case with this lens. It has its independent silent wave motor within this unit, so it can focus independently of the screw drive system. So you don't have to worry about the autofocus. It is going to autofocus very well and fine. Does it make any noise, for example? Yes, there is a slight noise, a little bit of a crinkly, crunchy sound when it's focusing, but you really need to put your ear to the camera and lens to hear it. It's very, very subtle. And I find with my uses anyway, as you know, I'll either use a little lav mic and be a couple of meters from the camera anyway, or like I'm doing now, I have a boom mic, shotgun microphone on a boom pole just above my head, facing away from the camera anyway. You're never going to hear any cranks or noises from the camera or lens combination. So because it's very subtle noise anyway, it's really a no-brainer, not a problem. But even if you were concerned with it, it would only be a concern if maybe you had the microphone mounted directly on top of the camera, and of course the sound is very close. You might pick up something, but that's not an application I would ever do, nor do I recommend it. I think this is probably that worst system for sound you could ever choose to have. So don't put a microphone on top of the camera. If at all possible, you could avoid doing so. So just put some photos up on the screen here to show you this combination a little bit closer and tidier. And I just wanted to tell you 100% that I'm very confident with its use. See, I'd used it before with my D810, D850. I knew it worked, but I just wanted to know how well it worked on this mirrorless system, and was it an option. Now, why do I even need this option? Well, one, it's the focal range for a start. Now, for me, 14 to 30 wasn't quite long enough. Surprisingly enough, it's a reasonable range, but I don't need 14 very often. In fact, I would say that 14 to 15, 16 range I would use maybe 2 or 3 times a year. You know, I'm not a real estate photographer. I'm not often in very cramped places. Usually I'm doing portrait photography or landscape out in the open in nature, so I've got all the room I need. So to step back a few extra feet or meters or whatever to get it in frame, that's never going to be a problem for me in my application. The few times that I need something a bit tighter in, usually something like this 17mm is going to be perfect. In fact, I did a lot of my the dance videos that you may see on my YouTube channel. They were all done on a 20mm prime. So 20mm was more than wide enough, even in studio applications. So I really can't see myself needing much more than a 17mm in width. So for my application, it's perfect. I'm hoping for the general public and average use, 17mm will be pretty much perfect for you as well anyway. So I think that's a great range. Now, just bringing the unit up for you again, just to show you that when you do change the focus, and I've got 3 little white knobs here to illustrate where my focus choices are. So we've got to here, what is it, 17, 24 and 35, and those are those little dots. See, when I bought this lens, I bought it second hand, and it was in pretty rough condition on the exterior. Interior, its operation characteristics were perfect. It operated beautifully. The glass is clean and bright and, you know, really good condition. Its autofocus function was fantastic. It just looked rough as guts on the outside. Obviously, you know, got a lot of wear and rubbing. So what I've done is I've just sanded it down, cleaned it up and resprayed it. I painted it out of my garage. So it's got a nice clean black paint job on it now, and it's looking very tidy and clean, and it looks a little bit like new. So I'm happy with that. It just needed a bit of tender loving care, and it's come up pretty good, and I'm very happy with it, how it looks and its performance. So I just want to let you know why it has maybe a look that is different to what you see on pictures. It's a little bit shinier. It's a satin black rather than a matte black. That's the paint I had, and I quite like it, so I use that. And I think it's a pretty good job. So I've saved myself hundreds and hundreds of dollars by buying something that just cosmetically didn't look quite 100%, but performed excellently and very well. I bought that lens for $550 Australian, and if I was to buy it in more of a pristine condition, you know, excellent condition or mint, would have cost me well over $1,000 to get it to that standard. So I've saved myself near $500, and all it cost me was a $10 spray can. So, and a bit of time masking it up and cleaning it. So I'm very happy with its performance. As I say, I'm going to show you that video where it's demonstrated to prove that it does work and it's very efficient. And I think for something like, most people aren't going to want to repaint their lens, but if you can spend $750 to $800, you'll get one in very nice condition and you'll be proud of it, and it'll operate beautifully. So I'm just recommending this lens combination. I think the camera and lens suits very well. The weight is also a very important factor. Now I just will take it off the camera for a few seconds to show you, but if I take it off, just put this down here to make it safe, and I put it on the table here in comparison, you'll see that even with the FTZ adapter, there's almost no difference in size. The weight factor is only 50 grams different between the 24 to 70 and the 17 to 35. So there is certainly no issue with size or weight. This one I've used on my Ronin, the 24 to 70, it operates perfectly and balances fine. So obviously this one is going to do exactly the same because weight and size is the same. So I found it extremely excellent option because it sort of overlaps, doesn't it? You've got 24 to 70, but here you've got 35 to 17. So you see that overlap you've got? So it makes it very, very interesting. So I can either use this one just for doing Ronin work all the time, and then I can have this for a mounted camera on a tripod. And I got two different lenses for two different functions. This has all the zoom range I need. 17 to 35 is awesome variety. Very, very versatile. And of course the 24 to 70 speaks for itself. It's a great range for almost everything you want to do. Great for a holiday lens. So I'll just put this together to make sure it all stays clean and safe. There we go, we've got that together. And I think it's actually a great looking package. I'm very, very impressed. The other thing I want to talk to you about today, and we'll put this aside so I don't distract myself and keep talking about this lens on and on and on, are some accessories. And one of the very important things about that lens that I absolutely adore is the fact that it takes a standard filter. So here I've got a little 77mm ND filter, and on it right now, as you can see, if I just bring it up, you'll see here I've got a circular ND filter on it now. It's a 77mm filter thread, and you know, that's fantastically versatile. Everybody has 77mm filters. If you've got a 70 to 200, you definitely will, and very many of the other pro level lenses will use 77mm. It's very common. So unlike the what is it, the 24, sorry. So unlike the 14 to 24mm S lens, which of course takes like a 112mm filter, who has those? I don't have any of them. I've never bought them before, and I particularly don't want to spend $300 to $500 on a filter for one lens, and that's all I'm ever going to use it on. So I'm quite happy to use the other filters I already owned, and there's another saving. See, I mentioned rather than spending $3,500 on that 14 to 24 and then have to spend another couple of $100 on a series of filters because it's so big, that outside diameter of glass, now I've saved another $300 on filters because I'm using what I already had. So the overall saving is the difference between $550 that I spent and no extra filters, and then you've got a difference of $3,500 and a few $100 on filters. So $1,000 for a really excellent unit at that 17 to 35 versus nearly $4,000 for this latest S lens. For the amount of times I use it, I'm not going to spend that extra $3,000, sorry. But that doesn't take anything away from that new lens. I'm sure it's beautiful, just way too expensive at the moment. Maybe it'll come down in price in time, who knows. So the next level of things we like to talk about is, I mentioned to you in the last video that I was using a ball head to mount the monitor on top of the camera, and that's actually fine, it works very well, but it's just a little bit tall and I tended to be looking up quite steeply to the monitor. I'm probably doing that a little bit now because I should be looking into the lens, but just I can't help but look at the monitor because I can see what's going on. But this is the little small rig contraption that I mentioned that I was using as a monitor mount, and when you put them side by side you can see that one is dramatically lower profile than the other, and that's exactly why I bought it, because I wanted to keep that monitor as low as possible. I've got a little Allen key here just to demonstrate some of its features because I think it's actually really, really cool. So what you have is a system here where you can actually lock it in place. So rather than just a little thumb lock, what you do is you have this little Allen key, you've got a little Allen key slot either side, and then you can release it and see how you can turn it, tilt it to any position you want. That's one option you have for tilting. Then the other option you have is a little Allen key hole inside it, and if you loosen that one up, then what you can do now is you can start to rotate the head. So if you want to spin it around in any direction and make it more viewable for you, you can do that as well. But when you've found your perfect little angle, you can of course just flip that up, tighten it on and lock it into its position. So now again, it only may do that if you wish it to. Once you get everything set and you're happy with it, of course, you can now Allen key it up, tighten the thing down, and it's never going to move out of place. Now you might not think that's really a big deal until of course your monitor starts going like this because someone's bumped the ball head, or you've not tightened it up enough, and that gets very exasperating. So just the guarantee of locking it in place, that's a really awesome little option. So a little small rig, it's a monitor mount, cost about $25. What a bargain. I love that. Quality piece of equipment. Another little trinket that I want to talk to you about, I'm looking actually at buying the battery pack. So wide portrait, horizontal view, nice comfortable hold, not so much really for the battery power, although that's going to be sort of handy I suppose, not to have to swap batteries halfway through a shoot or a video. If I actually want long battery life, I tend to use this arrangement, which is a big power bank and a cable, USB 3 cable. Now with this here, I can run for about 2 or 3 days continuously. It's actually 10 times the power of the little batteries that go in the Nikon cameras. So that's, if I really need battery power, that's what I'm going to be using. But it'll be a novelty not to go through at least 1 day of most shoots and not have to change the batteries if I have the grip with the 2 batteries in it. So it's not expensive. $500 is quite reasonable for what it is. That might be my next purchase. We'll talk about that another time. One thing I had purchased that cost next to nothing was these little darlings. Now these are what you're seeing in here is little wind socks. Now I've shown you this one before. I put it on my shotgun mic up here, and what this is they call them dead cats, and on a really windy day what they do is they diffuse that wind and stop all that horrible crackling noise on a windy day outside. But you can actually buy exactly the same thing for your little lav mics. So let me show you here. I have a lav mic here. It's my little Deity one, doesn't matter what brand, it's not important, and for the sake of this demonstration I put one of these little units on top of the lav mic. So what happens now is of course you can still pin it to your shirt and use it as you normally would. So I'll just illustrate here. So, and that's it, it would sit all tucked in, and that's a great little option on a windy day where what's going to happen is you're not going to get that crackly wind noise if you're outside and it's blowing a bit of a gale, but you still want to do your little vlog or your little video. So they just slip over the top. It's not complicated or difficult. They've got a little hole in the back, you just pop them over the top, but it will save your video from that crackling disaster that will destroy the sound on you. So I thought that was pretty cool. I just wanted to show you these. I bought these, I think they were $10 or something like that for a pack of 3. There's three different colors here. You've got brown, grey and white, and it also comes with a black. So you end up with 4 in the kit, and you've got any color for any color top or shirt or blouse or whatever the young lady or yourself happens to be wearing. So in summary of everything I've got to show you, that's really all I want to do. Enjoy the video showing me outside with the veranda, and you'll see the autofocus on that system does work very well. So you have a good day now. If I can be useful, don't forget guys, mention the comments down below and ask me any questions you should ever want, and I'm happy to help you out and try my best to be of service. Hey guys and girls, how you going? Doing a test of video autofocus with a very unusual combination. See, what I got today is I've got the Nikon Z711, and then I'm using now an old D lens. So I've got the FTZ adapter, the D lens, which is a 17-35. Now it's generally a screw drive lens and works very well with the DSLRs in the past, but this time I'm using it because it has a silent wave motor as well. So what the silent wave motor does is enables it to override the screw drive system and work with the electric motors inside. So let's just see how that operates. It usually works pretty well. I'm keen to see how it goes with the FTZ adapter and the new mirrorless system. So let's have a look as I move around, see if it's finding me with focus. Trusting that it's following me as I'm moving around the back room here. I've got a little veranda that's a bit shady, more comfortable on these warmer spring days. Have the sun off my head. So I'm hoping the lighting stays consistent. We've got a bit of cloud cover, and that can mean that the light will be brighter and softer as the clouds cover the sun. Hopefully that won't burden us too much. So I'm not going to go extravagant here. I'm not popping around and jumping up and down like a fool, because that's actually not the point of the exercise. This is going to be used on a Ronin S, and the point of the use case scenario is I'm following the subject anyway, so it's pretty hard for them to get out of focus, but I just want to see how it tracks it, and if there's acquiring a focus, that's actually the key factor for me. So we're just seeing how it goes as I come in and far. I'm about 2 feet away from the front of the lens right now. Now I'm going to come back to about 4 meters away, and I'm just trusting that it's tracking me and finding me as we're moving along. There's comments often about the noise of the D series lenses, or I should say anything with the FTZ adapter. If you're using an FTZ adapter, you can get a bit of a little crackly noises with the autofocus system. That's just because of the FTZ adapter, I suppose, interfering with the system. But here's the thing, I can't hear the lens at all. I know it is making a little whiny, cranky noises, but they're so soft you really can't hear them at all. Now if you're using something like I am now, or you're using a microphone here on my chest, a lav mic, or you're using a boom mic on a pole, then you're never going to hear the lens because it's further away. The only case scenario it's going to make an inconvenient noise and you're going to pick it up in your video is if you've actually got the microphone on top of the camera where it's sitting right over the lens. And of course I never do that. It's just something I don't practice because I think the sound quality is pretty terrible. I just noticed a light dip down now because it's gone behind a cloud. That can happen when you're outside circumstances. But I'm not too worried about it. I think we still get the point that it's finding me in focus, or it's not. So how you going, guys? We're at 35mm now, so I'll give that a shot and just compare that with the 24mm, see if it makes any difference what millimeters we're at. 35 is beautiful focal length, really get minimal distortion. You can sort of get tighter in on the subject. I find it a really awesome focal length to use when possible. 50 is actually my favorite. When I'm in my room doing my videos, it's always 50mm, but I think 35 is very versatile. So how are we going? Is it finding me in focus? No matter where I bob around, is it able to trace me? I trust it is. Not going to bore you with a very long focal test, but I just want to have a rough idea to see whether or not it's actually acquiring me or not. And I'll come right back and we'll see how it's going all the way back there. So anyway, there we have it. That's my test for today. Won't bore you with a very long one, but I just wanted to show you a few samples. In fact, what I might do is I might just throw in a test sample at 17mm now. You can see how wide it goes. So here we are, guys. We're at 17mm now. You can see it's quite wide and there's a little bit of distortion going on, I imagine, but that's okay. That can be corrected in post anyway if you're really worried about it. But for now, it's just, again, it's that focal testing thing. See if any of the focal ranges or zoom lengths make any difference to its acquiring focus or not. Really shouldn't make any difference, really, but it's just nice to know and confirm it. Do a few samples and then everybody's sure, aren't they? So 17mm was the perfect length for me on the Ronin. As far as it's super wide, means I get in close to the subject and I get all the scenery in. So when scenery is important in the shot, having something that goes that little bit wider is great. Previously I used the 20mm prime 1.8, which is a beautiful lens, make no mistake, but the problem I had with that is that it was a fixed focal length, and that made it a little bit not creative. You had that one focal length only, and as well as it did operate, it was a little bit limiting and boring. So having something that's got a range now where I can go from this ultra wide at 17, especially useful in cramped places like corridors and tight areas, and then of course I can go all the way to 35 and then get a nice beautifully cinematic sort of a look with a bit of shallow depth of field, being F2.8. So it just gives me a whole lot of options, this 17 to 35, and I thought if the focusing is actually operational and works well, that'd be amazing. So how are we going? Being able to acquire me? Remember, it doesn't have to acquire me fast. This is not a speed test. This is just, does it actually find me test. If it doesn't find the subject at all, then it's pretty much a waste of time. It's a little bit hard, isn't it? But even if it's slow in finding the focus, if it does come good, that's really all I need. In fact, it can have an interesting effect. If it's slow in acquiring focus, it can have like a focus pulling effect, it looks like, where you're gradually nailing the focus, and that can actually look quite pleasant. So that's all the tests I got for you today. Hope you've enjoyed my little experiment with you. Have a good day. Review the footage at will, and if you've got any comments or questions, please ask me, and I'm always happy to help out.